It's 2 in the morning. I've been driving for what feels like an eternity. The last 3 hours, I haven't seen a single gas station, car, or settlement. Fuel is running out, and my phone died 2 hours ago. It's a tough situation. On top of that, my eyes are getting heavy, and I really want to sleep. It's all from exhaustion. The road is monotonous, with an impassable thicket of forest on both sides, and ahead, only an empty and endless highway. I don't know where I am. The old paper map was of little help. My mind just refused to function. I needed to sleep. After driving a few more kilometers, I saw signs up ahead. A settlement with a peculiar name, Nilo, awaited me. I thought to myself, it's better to spend the night in this Nilo than stay on the highway surrounded by a creepy forest. A few kilometers past the signs, I turned onto an old road leading to the settlement. I don't know exactly how much farther I traveled until the moment the car completely stopped. There was no more fuel. There were few options. I didn't want to go back to the highway, especially since I hadn't seen a single car on it in the last 3 hours. It would be foolish to wait for a miracle, so I decided to try finding a village. If I was lucky, they might let me stay overnight, I thought. Taking an empty canister and everything essential, I set out on foot along the road. Darkness and only the faint light of a lighter illuminated the path ahead of me. Unfortunately, I didn't have a flashlight, so I had to walk almost blindly. Out of the corner of my eye, I occasionally noticed some silhouettes, but I dismissed it all as fatigue and tried to simply ignore it. I walked about 300 meters, after which I ran into an old fence. Did I finally make it? Visibility was still 0, so I couldn't see what was beyond the fence. I just wanted to find someone alive as soon as possible. I needed help now more than ever. Stepping over the broken fence, I headed into the darkness, towards where, as it seemed to me, there should be a house. 10 meters were enough for me to finally confirm that it was not a village, and my already not so great situation worsened as I found myself in complete darkness, alone in the middle of an abandoned cemetery. The graves were unkempt, some crosses simply lay on the ground. Perhaps I had stumbled upon a rural graveyard? The conclusion was clear. I was still on the right path, and somewhere nearby should be the village with the strange name Niloi. Suddenly, a crackling sound echoed from the darkness. I froze, listening to every rustle. A strange feeling that someone was watching me had not left me since the car. Occasionally, I had to extinguish the lighter because it became unbearably hot, and it took time for it to cool down a bit before I could light it again. During this interval, I remained in complete darkness. The crackling sound occurred again, then more and more. It was getting louder, but I still couldn't see anything, although it seemed like whatever it was very close. The lighter became hotter. I had to turn it off for a while, and I was left without the only source of light, standing still and listening to every rustle. I don't even know what was more frightening, the eerie noises or the deathly silence. That's how I stood for about a minute. The lighter had cooled down a bit, and I could light it again. I placed it in front of me, and perhaps due to strong excitement, I dropped it from my trembling hand at that very moment. Putting the empty canister next to it, I immediately fell to my knees and began frantically searching for the lighter. The ground was cold, and dampness could be felt on the fallen leaves. With one hand I eventually found it, but with the other, I touched something resembling a horse's hoof. For some reason, I was sure it was not a horse. A wild fear overcame me. Goosebumps ran across my body. Falling backward, I lit the lighter in front of me. The dim light illuminated a small area around. Where I had felt a hoof just a moment ago, there was nothing. How could this be? Getting back on my feet, I took the canister and headed in the direction I came from. After a few minutes, I realized that I was only going deeper, and there was no way out nearby. The cemetery seemed endless. How could such a huge graveyard exist in an ordinary village? The crackling sound echoed again. Something was constantly watching me, as if studying. It was unsettling. I understood that I was in a graveyard at night, not alone, and there was something that saw me, but I couldn't see it. Once again, extinguishing the light, I stopped to let the lighter cool down. At that moment, I heard the sound of hooves. Something was coming towards me. I froze in anticipation of the unknown. My heart was beating faster. It was very close. I lit the lighter, and what I saw at that moment momentarily stunned me. My hair stood on end. In front of me stood something terrifying with horns and large fangs. It stared into my eyes, grinning. I screamed, and I don't remember how I forced myself to run. But I ran as fast as I could, on weak legs. Away into the darkness. There was no more light, so every time I fell, stumbling over graves, I still got up and ran further. I heard the sound of hooves behind me. They were always close by. At some point, a sharp pain struck my face, as if someone had hit me with a bat. I can't describe this pain, but it felt like it would make me lose consciousness. Yet, this pain was nothing compared to the creature that was chasing me. I got up and found the cause of my pain. It was a tombstone that I simply hadn't noticed in the darkness. About 5 meters away from me, I heard footsteps again. I didn't wait for it to catch up, and I ran again. Soon I reached the fence. With one swift motion, I jumped over it and ran a few more meters. I heard an inhuman scream. The creature no longer chased me, but I still tried to get as far away from the cemetery as possible. It was already early morning when I reached the road. I didn't know which way to go and headed in the direction away from the graves. After walking about 400 meters, I finally reached the village. I knocked on the first house, and an old man opened it. He held a gun in his hands, but upon seeing me, he immediately hid it, thinking some supernatural being had come. Entering the house, he gave me tea. In the meantime, I told him about my night adventure. He said I was very lucky to have survived. This creature had already taken half of the village, hence the size of the cemetery. It only appears at night. No one has seen it in the morning. After a short rest, the old man and I went in search of a canister to collect and fill it with fuel. He happened to have a barrel of fuel, and I was lucky because the nearest gas station was not close. Passing among the graves, I noticed the dates and saw that many young people rested there, not spared from a terrible fate. The youth was too curious. So, we've been living like this for many years. Our village is located in seclusion, and nobody cares about us. There are very few people left, and I have nowhere to go, nor do I want to. I'm already old. After a few hours, I was on the road again, driving further, almost forgetting everything that happened, like a horrible dream. Involuntarily glancing in the rearview mirror, I was stunned. Behind me sat that same creature.